This is the Indian Viewpoint, a program concerning the Indian in the Northland. Here's George Homengo and Larry Aiken.
More important today at this hour, the economy. Before that, we were working closely with everybody. We had good cooperation. We had a good staff. And back in 1954, the U.S. Public Health Service took over the medical services. And they said that they're going to improve the medical services for the Indian reservations. All right, the Bureau of Indian Affairs was relinquishing their responsibility. You know why? Because they had used up all the trust money that the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians had, White Earth, Leech Lake, Fond du Lac, Net Lake, Grand Portage, and others here in the state of Minnesota. They failed to provide adequate medical services, and they didn't plan ahead of time. They never plan ahead of time. The only time they plan is for their retirement. The only thing that they plan in advance. But the Indian Health took it over, and they promised us better health service. All right, the Bemidji, the Lutheran Hospital, prevailed upon the Indian Health people to close down the Red Lake Hospital. The next one is going to be the Cass Lake Hospital, the Indian Hospital there. And they were going to help justify, strengthen their request for the Hill-Burton money to add on a special Indian wing there at the Lutheran Hospital in Bemidji. We found out about it in 56, 57. We challenged old Finkelstein, and we said that you are not representing the Indian people's health program. You're representing the city of Bemidji. And so we took after him. We found out that this was their plan, to close the Indian hospital to justify their request for 100% Hill-Burton money. So we've been fighting ever since then, and we finally, after 20 years after I got elected in office, the first priority was the hospital. The old hospital we had at Red Lake was built with Red Lake money back in 1914. And we paid the hospital services out of trust funds all through the rip-roaring 20s, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. They used all of our money. They had a rip-snorting time. They had prosperity at the expense of the Indians. They left us bankrupt and pauperized, begging. So coming into 1954, then 1957, they did close the hospital for about 3 days. January 12, 1959, we got it back because of our friendship right from the governor's office up to the delegation in Washington. And so we asked for a new hospital, and we finally got one built, dedicated in 1981. And we're quite fortunate to have it, and we're proud to have a facility of that kind, and we're going to do all we can to protect it so that the services will continue and for the benefit of the Red Lake people. Just to give you a quick stat report on that. The Red Lake enrollment was, in 64, our claims payment census, there was approximately 6,300 membership. Today, we got approximately 7,400 membership. So it goes to prove the improvement of the housing and the hospital services has certainly provided a healthful place for the Red Lake Band to live on the Red Lake Reservation, which, incidentally, is the aboriginal lands of the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians.
Mm-hmm. So, Raj, Esther, for just a moment, we talked about most of the Indian tribes in the United States accepted the Dawes General Allotment Act, and therefore become they lost a lot of rights by accepting the Dawes General Allotment Act. Red Lake never accepted the Dawes General Allotment Act and retained their own status as a sovereign nation. Could you tell us a bit about how you feel about that?
Well, the sovereign nation of the Indian people is identified by virtue of each administration that comes in. They always acknowledge the fact of the trust relationship the United States government has with the American Indians. Here, in our case, here in Minnesota, back in 1889, that was a combination of the Dawes Act and the allotment to force speed up the assimilation process because of the recommendation made by all of those bishops and missionaries running all over the country. and the Rice Commission was authorized to come to Minnesota and work out the allotment process with the 7 Chippewa reservations.
Mhm.
So they come up to Red Lake according to the minutes which has been uncovered in the last 20 years, 25 years really. It said that we'll better go and see Red Lake first because the chiefs, he said, they're opposed to any allotment, breaking up their reservation, because it'd be the hardest one to agree to any allotment. So they met for 7 days at Red Lake. Our old chief, Medweganonen, head chief, said no, Gawid. He said, why? He says, this land is not for sale. This land was given to us, handed down to us from our forefathers, and we're going to do the same. Handed down to our children, their children, their children, for their homeland. And this will be their warehouse from the lake and from the forest. So then they found out that they couldn't prevail upon Red Lake chiefs to agree to allotment. And they said, what do you want? So they made out a map that night to encompass the whole, the whole of the 2 Red Lakes, a mile on the outside. But of course, as you and I know, when you're writing up minutes, you can be mischievous as hell, and you can document those if nobody checks you. But this is what they did here in St. Paul. They meandered around, they cut off some of the land that is still in dispute right now. So they held off, and they said, all right, you got too much land. You got all this timber. Somebody's got forest fires. Hell, it was these cruisers that were sent out of Georgia, hiring some of them old lumberjacks who were looking for a quick dollar so they can buy some firewater in the saloons. They went on to torch some of the Indian forests, not only Red Lake, Leech Lake, White, and every place else. So they agreed to cede approximately 3 million acres of land, sold it. All right. It was commingled what they call the Minnesota Chippewa General Fund of the sale of the property of the other 6 reservations. Mm-hmm. And it said on it, the Minnesota Chippewa General Fund for the relief and civilization of the Minnesota Indians. Heck, the relief and civilization was for those goddamn bureaucrats that were hired. They got civil service status. They were telling you how to live at our expense. Now, under the 1889 agreement, there was a 50-year timetable that all the issues of those that signed the 1889 agreement, all the 7 reservations would be entitled to the distribution of the principal after 50 years. Come to 50 years, all there was approximately $700,000 left out of several $1 million. I haven't got the correct figures, but the story is around $50 to $100 million. All right. The Bureau started using our money and started building schools, hospitals, and providing nice, comfortable homes for the bureaucrats that were hired. And they forced all the Indian people to go to school and into their own school, and then they built hospitals as well. And that 1889 money at Minnesota Chippewa General Fund. And after 50 years, in 39, they had a segregation of funds. Red Lake got 1/7, and so the other 6 reservations, they got 1/7. So we each got $100,000 to our credit. That's the story that was related to me by some of the old timers. So the Bureau of Indian Affairs has been is guilty of maladministration in every sense of the word. And I've always said that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is a realty office for the United States Congress and for the White House. They're not the advocates for the Indian people, and I've challenged some of our own Indian people working in there. They're a bunch of self-serving Indians that work there in the Bureau of Indian Affairs.